A radical expression is defined as any expression containing a radical symbol. Many people mistakenly call this the square root symbol. However, it is a radical. The radicand is whatever is underneath the radical symbol.
The simplest radical form is when you simplify an expression so that there are no more perfect squares, perfect cubes, or numbers that can be divided out in the expression. This also includes removing any radicals from the denominator, such as rationalizing it.
I'm not afraid. It's been a ride.
So the square root of 24 can be broken down to the square root of 6 times the square root of 4. The square root of 4 is 2. So 2 times the square root of 6, since the square root of 6 is already simplified. Now the cube root of 625 can be broken down into the cube root of 125 times the cube root of 5. Now the cube root of 5 is already simplified, but the cube root of 125 is 5. So it would be 5 times the cube root of 5.
To rationalize the denominator, you have to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by, in this case, the square root of 3. So the numerator comes out to be 5 times the square root of 3, and the denominator is the square root of 3 times the square root of 3. The square root of 3 times the square root of 3 just comes out to be 3, so it's 5 times the square root of 3 all over 3.
When adding and subtracting radicals, you need to treat the radicals like they're variables. If they are not the same, then they cannot be added or subtracted. In this example, 5 times the square root of 5 plus 8 times the square root of 5. The square root of 5 is the same in both problems, so you can add the coefficients to make it 13 times the square root of 5. In this second problem, 12 times the square root of 2 minus 8 times the square root of 2. The square root of 2 is the same in both problems, so you can just subtract both the coefficients and the radical will stay the same. So it would be 4 times the square root of 2.
In this problem, the radical is the same in all the terms, so you can add the coefficients together. So it would be 2 plus 5 minus 4 times the square root of 3. 2 plus 5 is 7, 7 minus 4 is 3, so the final answer comes out to be 3 times the square root of 3. If this were an SOL, this type of problem would most likely be multiple choice, so we would just select the answer that corresponds with our answer, 3 times the square root of 3. They also might give other answers similar to or not fully simplified.
In this problem, we have the square root of 25 over 3 plus the square root of 12 over 3. So the square root of 25 it can be simplified down to 5 because it's a square, and the square root of 3 is already simplified, so that stays the same. Now add the square root of 12 over 3, which can be simplified to 2 times the square root of 3 because of 4, and put that over 3. Now, with this problem, you have to rationalize the denominator because you have a radical in the denominator. So you have to multiply the numerator and denominator by the square root of 3. Now you'll have this 5 times the square root of 3 over 3, because the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is just 3. And then you have to add 2 times the square root of 3 over 3. Since the denominators and the radicals are the same, you can add the coefficients together. Now you add 5 and 2 times the square root of 3 over 3, and your final answer will be 7 times the square root of 3 over 3.
I'm not afraid. It's been a ride.
When multiplying, we have to treat the radicands and what's outside the radical separately. So in this case, we would just multiply 6 times 10 since they're outside the radical, and then the square root of 3 times the square root of 2. This gives us 60 from 6 times 10 times the square root of 6. And since the square root of 6 is already in simplest terms, that will be our final answer. In this next problem, we have 8 times 2, since this is what's outside the radical, and then the square root of 5 times the square root of 5, which are both inside the radical. This ends up giving us 16 times 5, because the square root of 5 times the square root of 5 is just 5. 16 times 5 is then 80. Now the SOL also offers technology enhanced questions, so you may have to write in your answer. So for our last example, we would have written in 80 to represent 80. Also, they may have answers or possible answer choices already selected out for you. In this case, you would just press the button that marks 8 and then press the button marking 0. You may also have to drag them into place.
In this problem, we have 8 times the square root of 15 over 4 times the square root of 3. 8 over 4 can be its own term, and 15 over 3 can be its own term. So now 8 over 4 simplifies to 2, and the square root of 15 over 3 can simplify to 5, to the square root of 5. So the final answer would be 2 times the square root of 5. Now in the second problem, 16 over 12 times the square root of 3, 16 over 12 can be its own term, and 1 over the square root of 3 is its own term. Now they are not completely separated, they are still together, they're just being multiplied. Now since the square root of 3 is in the denominator, you have to rationalize it by multiplying by the square root of 3 over the square root of 3. So 16 over 12 simplifies to 4 over 3, and 1 over the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 over the square root of 3 simplifies to the square root of 3 over 3. Now multiply the two terms, and your final answer would be 4 times the square root of 3 over 9.
In some problems, you have to expand and then simplify. So in this problem, we have to use FOIL to expand. So first, we multiply the first terms, which would be the square root of 2 times the square root of 2. Then we're going to multiply the outer terms, which would be the square root of 2 times 5. Then we multiply the inner terms, which would be 5 times the square root of 2. And then we multiply the last terms, which would be 5 times 5, and that comes out to be 25. Then you just add all these together by combining like terms. So we can add, or square root of 2 times square root of 2 comes out to be just 2. Then 5 times the square root of 2 plus 5 times the square root of 2 is just 10 times the square root of 2, since they have the same radical in them. And then 25 just stays 25. You can then combine 25 and 2 to get 27. And you just leave 10 times the square root of 2, with your final answer being 27 plus 10 times the square root of 2. So a conjugate is a binomial that is formed by negating the term you are trying to eliminate. So essentially, it means if you have x plus y, the conjugate is going to be x minus y. You simply flip the addition sign to a subtraction sign, and vice versa.
This problem, we will be multiplying by the conjugate to remove the radical from the denominator, to put it in simplest terms. So the denominator is 4 minus the square root of 3. The conjugate would be 4 plus the square root of 3. So multiply the numerator and the denominator by 4 plus the square root of 3 over 4 plus the square root of 3. So while doing this, you would FOIL the numerator and the denominator to get the terms. So the first terms would be 6 times 4 is 24. The outer terms would be 6 plus the square root of 3, 6 times the square root of 3. Then the inner terms would be 4 times the square root of 3. And then the last terms would be square root of 3 times square root of 3, which is just 3. Now in the denominator, the first terms would be 4 times 4, which is 16. Outer terms would be 4 times the square root of 3. The inner terms would be 4 minus 4 times the square root of 3. Then the last terms would be minus 3. So what you see when you do this is in the denominator, the radicals cross out. And so there is no more radical in the denominator. In the numerator, you can combine the radicals because they have the same radicand, and also combine like terms. So in the numerator, you would have 27 plus 10 times the square root of 3. And in the denominator, you would have 16 minus 3, which is just 13. And that's your final answer.
Now we're going to show another technology-enhanced question. The question asks which of these is the conjugate of x plus y. Earlier, we showed that the conjugate of x plus y is x minus y. In this case, they would have given you 4 different answer choices, and you would select the one or more that you believe is correct. Once selected, the border of this answer choice would be highlighted, indicating that you have selected it.